I thought I had won. I had protected my sister, Leela, secured her $5 million trust, and stripped my brother, Mark, of his control over the $15 million estate. He was removed as executor, formally deemed an abuser of fiduciary duty, and left with nothing but his pride and his rage. But a few weeks after the court appointed the new trustee, the warning signs began. There were small, mysterious, high-value, unauthorized stock transactions in the estate's portfolio. Transactions that could only have been executed using the secure, physical keys my father had used. And Mark, who still had one set of those keys, was too proud to simply walk away. His next move wasn't financial. It was personal, insidious, and devastating. He was gathering my private medical records. He was preparing for a proxy fight, a move to have the board declare me unfit to serve due to my past autoimmune disorder and the emotional stress of the last year. He wasn't just coming for the money anymore. He was coming for my reputation, my sanity, and the legal right to protect my sister. He had one last weapon he thought I didn't know about. And I had one final secret document left by my father that would expose him entirely. This was the final battle for the soul of my family. The estate's new trustee, Mr. Goldman, a cautious accountant, first noticed the anomalies. Over a 3-week period, nearly $800,000 in liquid assets had been moved out of various investment vehicles and into a blind holding company. It was clean, sophisticated, and untraceable without a subpoena. Mark, removed from his executive role, still maintained a deep network within the trading community. He was bleeding the estate slowly, testing the limits of the new trustee's vigilance, using his last physical advantage, the key to my father's old private safe containing duplicate access codes. I sat with Mr. Goldman reviewing the charts. "He's not just stealing Alex," Goldman said grimly. "He's creating chaos. He wants the estate to look unstable so he can argue the court-appointed management is failing." The theft was bad, but the psychological warfare was worse. Mark was deliberately trying to panic the board and the court. The deeper betrayal came 2 weeks later. I received a cryptic warning from a former colleague of Mark's at a financial firm, a woman I had once helped in a minor legal matter. She told me that Mark had contacted her husband, a doctor, under false pretenses. Mark was requesting copies of my full medical file, specifically related to the side effects of my chemotherapy and the initial notes on my emotional state after my father's death. His plan was clear. The Thorne Health Group board, the one that had just appointed me to the empty seat, was due for a review of my credentials next month. Mark intended to use my past medical history to argue that the immense stress of the legal battles, combined with a potentially debilitating autoimmune condition, rendered me too volatile and medically compromised to serve as a director and oversee Leela's $6 million trust. If the board agreed, I would be forced to resign. Mark would then appeal to the court, arguing that he was the only stable family member left. He would be reinstated as the executor, and he would seize the entire $15 million fortune he had just lost. My victory would have been meaningless. My illness, which I had fought so hard to keep private, was now his ultimate weapon. I was now fighting 2 battles. A financial audit against a phantom thief, and a character assassination based on my health. I needed an absolute kill switch. I needed something that would not only expose Mark's theft, but permanently strip him of any claim to the estate. I realized I hadn't properly investigated my mother's small, personal belongings. My father was a paper trail expert, but my mother, bless her heart, was sentimental. I remembered my mother's safe deposit box. It was a small one, completely separate from my father's massive corporate vault. Mark had dismissed it as containing costume jewelry. I obtained the access key from Mrs. Peterson, my mother's lawyer. When I opened the box, it wasn't jewelry. It was a single, laminated piece of paper folded precisely in half. It was not a will. It was a trust codicil, an amendment dated 18 years ago attached to the original family trust that established the $15 million estate. The title, handwritten in my mother's precise script, was chilling. The Absolute Moral Clause. The codicil was a masterpiece of legal protection. It stipulated that any heir or executor of the $15 million Thorne family trust who was found by a court of competent jurisdiction to have engaged in any act of financial malfeasance, neglect, or deliberate exploitation of a dependent family member would not only forfeit their executorship, but would be immediately and permanently disinherited from the entire $15 million trust. The intent was devastatingly clear. My mother knew my father had a soft spot for Mark, and she structured the trust so that if Mark's greed ever hurt Leela, he would lose everything. But the codicil held one final incredible twist. If an heir was disinherited due to this clause, their share would not revert to the remaining family members. It would transfer to the person who initiated the legal action that proved the malfeasance. In short, I had initiated the legal action, the fiduciary abuse motion, that had already proved Mark's malfeasance. The codicil, once recognized by the court, would transfer Mark's entire share of the $15 million to me. My inheritance had just gone from a single house to the entire massive liquid estate. My mother's foresight was staggering. I showed the codicil to Mr. Jenkins. He was silent for a full 5 minutes. "Alex," he finally said, "this is airtight. It uses the exact legal language of the statute we used to remove him. Your mother was brilliant. This isn't just a win. This is the end of Mark Thorne's financial life." But before we could file, I needed to expose the current theft, the $800,000 Mark was still draining. We subpoenaed the blind holding company. The paper trail led straight back to Mark, but the transfer was co-signed by one other person. Victor, Mark's slimy lawyer who had helped him set up the exploitation of Leela. They were working together, using their legal knowledge to systematically steal from the estate Mark was supposed to protect. I didn't file the codicil immediately. I knew Mark was relying on the chaos. I decided to use his theft to neutralize his medical attack. Since the estate was involved in interstate securities trading, Mark's and Victor's unauthorized transactions constituted securities fraud. I instructed Mr. Goldman to report the full $800,000 theft to the Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC, naming Mark and Victor as the primary perpetrators. The result was immediate and explosive. The SEC launched an emergency investigation. Mark and Victor were hit with subpoenas, their personal assets frozen, and their banks placed under strict review. The chaos they had intended to create in the estate was now focused entirely on their own professional and personal lives. Mark's planned proxy fight using my health records suddenly looked ridiculous. No board would side with a man facing SEC investigation and asset forfeiture over an established director, regardless of her medical history. The board review meeting arrived. The room was tense. Mark's representative, another ambitious young lawyer, started the attack immediately. "Gentlemen," the lawyer began, "we must question Miss Thorne's fitness to serve. Her autoimmune disorder, combined with the documented emotional strain of the last 2 years, suggests a risk of impaired judgment. We ask the board to review her medical history and consider placing the estate under temporary, stable management." I stood up. I didn't deny my health or my emotional strain. I said, "Yes, my health journey has been difficult, but that is a challenge I face personally. The question before this board is not my health. It is the integrity of the person who challenges me." I held up the SEC's asset freeze order against Mark. My brother, the man who seeks to displace me, is currently under emergency investigation by the SEC for the theft of $800,000 from the very estate he seeks to control. Furthermore, a court of law has already ruled that he engaged in the financial abuse and neglect of a disabled family member. I am asking you to choose between a daughter who fights for the family's solvency and health and a thief who exploits his own sister for profit and is facing federal charges. The vote was unanimous. The motion to remove me was dismissed. The board then moved to officially file a massive civil suit against Mark and Victor to recover the stolen funds. With Mark financially ruined, professionally indicted, and officially disqualified, the time was right for the final move. Mr. Jenkins filed the motion with the probate court, attaching my mother's absolute moral clause codicil. Mark was served the papers 2 days later. He called me from his lawyer's office, his voice hoarse, desperate, and finally broken. "Alex, you can't do this. You've ruined me. You've taken everything." "You ruined yourself, Mark," I said. "You chose greed over Lila. You chose theft over integrity. My mother planned for this day. She knew your character better than anyone. I am simply executing the consequences of your choices." I explained to him, slowly and calmly, exactly what the codicil meant, that the legal finding of his malfeasance transferred his share of the $15 million to me, not because I wanted it, but because I had fulfilled the moral requirement set by my mother. "You are permanently disinherited, Mark," I concluded. "You have nothing." The court quickly recognized the codicil. The transfer of the entire $15 million estate to me, now combined with the $5 million trust, was executed. I was suddenly the sole legal steward of the entire family fortune. I immediately did 3 things. I bought the family house back. I used the liquid assets to purchase the house from the estate at fair market value. It's now Lila's permanent home, managed under a perpetual family trust I set up. Lila is back where she belongs, surrounded by the warmth and familiarity she needs. I created the Sarah Thorne Integrity Foundation. I endowed it with $5 million. Its mission is to support organizations that protect the financial well-being of disabled adults and provide legal aid against financial exploitation. My mother's spirit finally had its voice. I resigned from the Thorne Health Group board. I secured the legacy. Now I could step back. I nominated an outside independent female executive known for her fierce ethics and appointed her with a massive bonus package funded by the estate. The company was now safe from family greed. B. The final conversation. Mark was forced to liquidate everything he owned to pay back the estate and fight the SEC charges. He eventually lost his professional license. I saw him one last time. A year later, I was visiting Lila and he was walking by the house. He looked defeated, empty. He stopped, unable to move past the home he had lost. "You won, Alex. You destroyed me." I walked out to the curb. "I didn't destroy you, Mark. Your own choices did. You made 2 critical errors. You mistook the price of the cabin for the value of the land, and you mistook the legal papers for the moral codicil. You thought Lila was a liability to be minimized. You didn't realize that she was the ultimate heir. I took everything you wanted, and I used it exactly as our mother intended, to protect the vulnerable. The money isn't mine, Mark. It belongs to the conscience of the family." I didn't offer him forgiveness. I offered him truth. He turned and walked away. C. The quiet victory. Life is quiet now. Lila and I live together in the house. The best victory wasn't the millions I controlled, but the peace I felt every time I saw her smile. The fear and stress of the constant legal battles are gone. I still work, managing the foundation and ensuring Lila's care is impeccable. I have found my purpose not in building an empire, but in securing a legacy of protection. I often look at the old, tattered insurance manual Lila still keeps. It's a reminder that the best defenses are always built with love, foresight, and a profound understanding of human nature. My father protected my health. My mother protected my heart. And together, they gave me the power to protect my sister.
The greatest inheritance is not the money, but the knowledge that someone loved you enough to build a sanctuary for your future. My parents' wills and trusts were a map, but the moral codicil was the compass. My brother thought he could weaponize my vulnerability, my illness, and my sister's disability. But he never understood that a person fighting for a loved one is the most dangerous force in the world. And sometimes the only way to save your family is to legally dismantle the parts of it that are driven by greed. I didn't just win a lawsuit. I redefined what it means to be a daughter, a sister, and a steward of a legacy. But a family fortune always attracts attention, and as I began to settle into my new life, I discovered that the foundation's original attorney, Mrs. Peterson, was suddenly selling off her assets and preparing to leave the country. She was the only person who knew the truth about my mother's final full codicil, the one that wasn't in the insurance box, and I had a sickening feeling that the betrayal wasn't over.